Well, let's talk about innovation. Let's talk about innovation. And, we just talked about radical adaptability, and that was a great talk. And now we have to put it to work. And you do that with innovation. Now, innovation is a topic I've been speaking about for 15 years. As you heard, I started two pretty innovative companies. I've written a book about innovation. And frankly, the biggest problem I usually have in talking to people about innovation is there is no burning platform. There's no urgency. Oh, they might feel some business tremors out there, but basically everything's going fine and we're not going to change, right? But disruption is here. We know it's here today. We're in the midst of the biggest business and cultural disruption of our lives. So it's not so hard to talk to people about innovation, get them excited about it. The question is how to do it. And particularly in this crisis that's so uneven. Disney lays off 28,000. Procter and Gamble is running 24 hours a day. Marriott has the worst quarter in history. Walmart hires 100,000 workers. If you're in travel, you're in a tough space. We need radical adaptability. Google says, well, they did say back to work in July. This morning, they say back to work in September. But Phillips Petroleum says, come back to work now. Of course, they want people burning gasoline, right? And digital transformation isn't slowing in this period, it's actually accelerating. So, this is a world where there are no blueprints, a world where we have to challenge long held assumptions and think about how do we radically change. This morning, I read in the Wall Street Journal before I came down here, here are the top 10 innovative companies in the world. And of course, many of them are software companies, and it's easier to innovate in software. You don't have a big factory, right? But look, there's a pharmaceutical company, an industrial company, and even a commercial real estate company. Anyone can do this. And I know it's a time when you're feeling confused and perplexed and bewildered. But think about this. We're in the midst of disruption. But disruption, innovation, disruption, they're just two sides of the same coin. You only call it a disruption when you don't do it. If you do it, it's an innovation. So let's talk about how to be more innovative. Let's start with a definition. A good definition is this one. Creativity is about thinking up new things. Innovation is about doing them. It's about putting ideas to work. They don't count unless they make it to the market. So I've got a few ideas on how you can be more successful with innovation. I'm going to talk about the two most important pieces of innovation and then innovation in a large corporation. Now, the engine of innovation rests on twin pillars, the pillar of culture and the pillar of team. If you get culture and team right, you put gas in the tank of innovation. You will succeed. But you see, culture eats strategy for lunch. You can have the best strategy you want, but if you don't have a culture of innovation, not going to happen. You won't get any ideas at all unless you nurture the flame. Because an idea is a spark. It's a little flame. We're going around the room and saying, oh, and we could do this, and we could do this, and we can do this. And somebody says, but let me play devil's advocate for just a moment here. And poof, the candle goes out. The idea is gone. One of the biggest things you can do to increase innovation is think about your attitude toward risk. Do you avoid it, reduce it, transfer it, or accept it? In the 21st century, we have to accept more risk. Now, I love this. I just added it when I missed that cue. You can't cross a chasm in two small jumps, right? We're at a chasm. We need to have a big jump. Now, I started my career as a receptionist in a travel agency 50 years ago. 6 months in, my manager said, let's go do a startup. And you might think that was a big risk, but it was really a small risk. I was single. I was 21. I wasn't making much money anyway. And in 5 years, we turned that into the 50th largest travel agency in the United States. Later, I went to American Airlines and started climbing the ladder from director all the way up to chief information officer. When I was CIO, I took a huge risk. I was married. I had a big house, a big mortgage, 2 kids. I said, you know, that little online product we have, I want to go run that. People said, you're crazy. There's only 10 people there. I said, no, I think there's something in it. And we turned it into Travelocity and took it public for $1.2 billion. Big risk, big reward. Now, since then, I've taken a lot of small risks. I'm a speaker, an author, a consultant. I've served on 19 corporate boards. If I look back at those companies, some of them shrank, some of them blew up entirely. And the rest of them created $8 billion in value, and 2 of them are unicorns, billion-dollar startups. So take the first risk. Take a risk. In risking, you have to build a culture of experimentation, a culture where you try and you fail. As Jeff Bezos said recently, you can't call it an experiment if you know the outcome. So experiment. Here's an example. In advertising, there are copywriters and editors. The writers write, the editors pick. So here are 3 ads from the last campaign here in the United States. Which one's best? It actually wasn't these 2. This one pulled in 35% more dollars than the other 3. How do they know? Did they have a fantastic editor? No. They ran ABCD testing for 2 hours and let the customer decide. At Kayak, 20% of what you see is a test. We are constantly testing, generally failing, but continuously learning. And when you fail, and I hope you do, because if you don't fail, you're not trying hard enough, kill projects, not people. Let me say that again. Kill projects, not people. You know, early on at Travelocity, I put a bunch of videos on a CD-ROM, put it in the marketplace, because in those days, believe it or not, you couldn't send movies over the internet. I spent $1 million on that project, and I lost $1 million on that project. It was an abject failure. And I had to go to my boss, the CFO at American Airlines, and tell him I'd failed. I was terrified. You know what he said? He said, Terry, what did you learn? Well, the word spread like wildfire. Terry didn't get fired. It was a culture-changing moment. I knew I couldn't lose $1 million again, but this guy was a coach. And coaches don't just throw people off the team. They work to make the team better. Think about this. Why do sports teams watch this fumble again and again? Not to assign blame, but to ensure victory. So experiment, fail, and learn. And fail small. Build prototypes. That way you don't have to spend a lot of money. Prototype as if you were right, but listen as if you were wrong. Don't fall in love with your prototype. Today, you can prototype with AI on the web. You can use a 3D printer. It's cheap, fast, and you don't lose much when you fail. Now, recently I interviewed my friend John Rossman. John was a senior Amazon executive and has written 3 books about Amazon. Let's hear what he says about culture. John, you've written 3 books about Amazon and its culture and its business model. You talk about 2-way doors and 2 pizza teams and day one mentality. What is it about their culture that allowed them to handle a 25% increase in sales while keeping customers happy and focusing on employee safety?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I wish it was just one thing I could answer that with, but I really think it's the combination of a few factors, and I've kind of narrowed it down to 3, which is, I think first it was decisive leadership. They said early and clearly, we are completely focused on COVID. We are completely switching to essential items, which gets to the second attribute, which is a leadership structure and a management structure that creates middle management that takes guidance like that and interprets it for their own businesses. And so they don't wait for permission. They hear something like that, they adjust it for their business. And so they have strong middle management decision making. And I think the third thing is really the way that they architect their processes, their data, their systems are always around scalability and being able to be more nimble than most in new business requirements, new approaches, new points of emphasis, new use cases. And I really think it's those combinations of decisive leadership, middle management who's able to interpret and implement guidance like that, and then scalable and more extensible data and processes.
So the most innovative company in the world says it's decisive leadership, don't wait for permission, and scalability. As a leader, you have to realize Your wake is larger than you imagine. As you move through the world, you leave a big wake behind you. It consists of what you say and do. So someone comes in with a new idea and you say, well, Barbara, we've always done it this way. And we've actually never done it that way. What happens when you say that? You'll never get a new idea from her again. Actions and words matter. Do you support, amplify, concur, and endorse? Or disagree, minimize, and play devil's advocate? What you say has a lot to do with the innovation you will get. And you can't do this from an easy chair. Changing culture is a contact sport. Get out there and do it. It's the number one thing you can do for innovation. And then think about your team. It's really all about the team. In this world, we require old world knowledge mixed with youthful exuberance. Now, at Travelocity, that was inside American Airlines, I wanted to bring in a bunch of people from outside, people who weren't in the travel business, but HR said I couldn't bring them in from the outside. I had to hire from the inside. Took me 6 months to change their mind. These young people said the industry was broken. They could fix it, but they had no industry knowledge and no industry contacts. On the other hand, I had the dot corp, or you might say the corpse, the suits who said the industry was fine. It didn't need fixing. It worked at a slow pace, but they had domain expertise. They knew travel. You put them together, they fought like cats in a bag. But out of that crucible came a $3 billion company. So maybe you say, okay, Terry, but I'm not hiring right now. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Then put together a glass half full team. Look for positive people, people who want change, because negativity wipes out innovation. Look for positive people. Look for builders. As Tony Fadell, who started Nest, says, I'm a guy who's at the beginning of things. I don't do maintenance mode. That's the kind of person you want on your team for innovation. And yeah, the young people will complain you have to teach old dogs new tricks, but new dogs don't know any tricks. So work with them both. And maybe hire people who don't fit in. Would you hire this cat? He did turn out to be the world's richest man. And I got to know Bill Gates pretty well. He was sort of our sales rep at American Airlines. In those days, wickedly smart, deeply insightful, and quite odd. You might not have hired Bill. You would have been wrong. The world wants geniuses. It just wants them to behave like other people. They don't. They're difficult to manage. That's okay, because they'll help you change the world. Susan Creedle from Leo Burnett says hiring's like putting together an orchestra. True in a big company, but on an innovation team, more like a jazz band. People who can make amazing, amazing sounds without sheet music. They innovate. And don't forget that rock stars hang out with rock stars. If you hire top people, more top people will want to be with them. That happened to us at Kayak. Do you think one person can make a difference? I think one person can make all the difference. Think of the difference Satya Nadella made, announced today as the most successful executive in the world. Or the difference Bob Crandall made at American Airlines. One persistent guy at Expedia beat Travelocity. One guy said to the boss, we should put air, car, and hotel together in a dynamic package. Took him a year to convince the boss, another year to build the software. When they rolled it out, they doubled their sales in 2 quarters, past Travelocity like we were stopped. Travelocity never caught them. One guy. And by the way, keep your team small. Amazon has a great rule, 2 pizza teams. If it takes more than 2 pizzas to feed the team lunch, the team is too big. Scale is the enemy of speed. Now, let's talk about innovation in a large corporation. That's different than regular innovation. You see, Travelocity was built inside of the Sabre division of the multi-billion-dollar American Airlines company. It was intrapreneurship. Now, the good of big is you don't need venture capitalists. You don't need their money. It's easy to get officers and computers, and you can use their big name to open doors. But the bad of big is you don't get venture capitalists, and they're pretty smart. And the corporate money comes at a price. Endless, numbing, choking bureaucracy. So what to do? Everybody wants to help. They have space and furniture and data processing and advertising, but they also have rules. So I've got some prescriptions about what to do. Building innovation in a large corporation, first start with your organizational structure. Corporations are organized in divisions. Divided is the operative word. So people have a big idea, like in those days, the internet. What should we do? Well, let's form a committee. That's not the best idea. Perhaps a better idea for a big idea is a separate organization where everybody gets together. Then you get a team culture. You see, 75% of venture backed startups fail. Only 50% make it past their fourth birthday. What makes you think your part time committee would be better than a startup? It won't be. Now, I reported to the CEO, and he provided substantial air cover for this new idea. And I was a longtime divisional leader, and I had significant and sufficient networking relationships and divisional clout to get things done. Now, after organization, surprisingly, it's location. Think outside the building, says Rosebeth Cantor from Harvard. I moved the team into a bankrupt media room the corporation had in a strip mall. People worked in dark rooms and sound studios. It took me a year to get IT to move in with us. Once we did that, we had great results because we built a team culture. Now, how about staffing? Well, we already talked about that, getting a balance of views. Jim Collins said in Built to Last, we found in companies that make good decisions, debate is real. You want debate. You want people who will argue with you. William Wrigley said, when two people in business always agree, one of them is unnecessary. So have a good debate. Debate and change. And finally, funding. Our budget was held by the CEO. It was sort of a secret budget like the NSA. There was a lot of grumbling, but we were losing a lot of money. So it was important to have the budget held at a high level. So staffing, funding, organization, location. And let me mention air cover. That was really important to have the CEO cover us up, right? Because it was great to have the big company. Their name opened doors, their buying power could help. We stole great people from them. And they had a good legal department that we hid behind when we got in trouble. But you have to escape when it hurts. Purchasing was too slow. IT was too expensive. Advertising didn't know consumers. Hiring from the inside made us uncompetitive. And when we asked for stock options, forget about it, right? So eventually we kind of ran away from home. We didn't use their PR, advertising, HR, accounting, or dress code. But that took a management structure that provided air cover. Most of my job was attending their staff meetings and board meetings and beating them off with a stick. And it was important because later, after Travelocity went public, it was taken private and they broke it up into departments. And a $1 billion company later sold for less than 200 million. So air cover is critical. And let's step back on organization again. You know, I talked about a separate organization, and the person in charge of the internet at Best Buy told me, or at REI actually told me, we had a separate division for the internet, but when the internet grew up, we turned the org chart on its side. We turned the org chart on its side and poured the internet in and made everybody responsible for e-commerce and blew away that little division because we didn't need it anymore. So take your new idea and protect it in the greenhouse when it's small, and then decide what to do later. Spin it out, make it a division, but protect it when it's small. Now, let me tell you a story about how Travelocity evolved. We had to survive the pivot. The pivot is important because we all want certainty. We want the straight road. But in every startup, and I've done 5, the road looks like this. It never turns out the way you think. Helmut von Moltke said, no battle plan survives contact with the enemy. Well, no business survives contact with the customer. So we have to be able to pivot. Travelocity's story, well, we started like a regular travel agency, earning commissions. And then Microsoft entered the market with a new product called Expedia. And we were terrified that they were going to build travel into the browser. The airlines were terrified too, and they cut commissions from 10 to 8 because they didn't want Travelocity or Expedia to succeed. We moved to higher margin products, cruises, and tours, went public and acquired the number 3 site and got the AOL traffic. And the airlines cut commission from 8 to 5. That hurt. So we reduced costs and added telephone sales. Then the airlines got together and created a product called Travelocity Terminator. You may have heard it, called Orbitz. I complained to everyone, even the president, but Orbitz rolled out. And then 9/11 hit us and business fell 70%, kind of like now. And the airlines took the opportunity to cut commissions to nothing, nunca, zero. But our sales continued to grow that whole time. You know, it was kind of what has been called the victory of the Lilliputians, the little guys who tied down Gullivers because they moved so very fast. Carlson Wagon Lee and American Express, the 2 biggest physical travel agents, never went online. They failed to compete. We were constantly transforming our model. They never transformed theirs. So you can't stand still. You have to transform, particularly in a disruption like this. We built change in the plan. I'd like to say it was great management, but we rigidly controlled costs. We listened to our virtual customers. We experimented and failed fast. Are you discouraged by all this story? Don't be. You can do this. You don't have to change the world to cause disruption and build innovation. Think about kayak.com. Really, it just offered choice. Just one new thing, choice of where you booked. That's worth $1.2 billion. How about Smart Destinations, where I was on the board? We bundled transactions together. You could go to Boston and go see everything at a discount. We sold that company for $50 million. You don't have to change the world. You just have to change your business plan. If work, earn money. If not work, go back and change it again. And you might say, yeah, but this innovation will cost a lot. You can do much more with less today. That's really the story of Kayak. The story of Kayak begins with a dinner and a napkin, just like many startups. The head of Expedia, the former head of Travelocity, and a venture capitalist got together. And we said our customers are getting smarter. They're going to Travelocity, Expedia to get price, but they're going to American, United, and Marriott to book. We said, why don't we build a site that searches everything where they can book direct? Now, look at the difference between Travelocity and Kayak. It has to do with how technology changed. Travelocity had 3,000 people. We grew through traditional advertising, TV and radio. We had a big customer service department. We were travel agents, and we were profitable. Kayak went public with 220 people. We grew through search, no customer service. We're a search model, and we were highly profitable. You see, if you think about the old models, the way things used to be done, you have to today think about the new model. Funding? Well, funding is Kickstarter. The team is me. I share some space in my apartment. I push things out and call them a beta. I crowdsource the people I need. I use social to get customers, and my IT is in the cloud. That's very different than a big team and focus groups and big iron. You can do more with less today. Corporations are using these startup techniques to be successful. Yeah, Steve started Apple in a garage, but Zuck started Facebook in a dorm room. You can do more with less today. So let's review. We talked about culture and team. They are the pillars that support the engine of innovation. You need a culture where people aren't afraid to go for it. A culture where an idea can exist, where you can experiment, build prototypes, fail small, fail fast, where you kill projects, not people. Your wake is larger than you imagine. You need a balance of views. Mix it up. Hire people who don't agree with you. And think about small teams. Small teams are key to getting things done. Look beyond what's immediately apparent. Think about who's approving ideas, who's turning them down. Maybe they are the impediment to success. One person can make a difference, and you can go with your gut, but don't bet the farm on it. Build a prototype. You can do more with less today. It won't be easy. This is a terribly difficult time for travel. Competition is fierce, but you can succeed if you use these principles and the many more we'll talk about in the masterclass. You too could create a $1 billion startup inside your company. You too could make that small and simple change that will make all the difference. If you realize that change is inevitable, but growth is optional. Whoops, growth is up to you. Sorry about that. Growth is up to you.